unless you subscribe and like. All right, hello YouTube, welcome back to the Grease Goblins YouTube channel. In today's video, we're going to be doing why didn't Sauron have like guards at Mount Doom? Why wasn't he protecting it better? And all that. But before we get into the video, if you guys like to like, subscribe, and comment, please do. It helps the channel grow and reach out to people that might like this content as well. And also, in this video, I'm joined by two of my friends, Logan and Nick. So if you guys want to say hi.
Hello, YouTube.
Yeah, so they're on here. If you like them, tell me. If you don't, we'll kick them to the curb, I guess. I don't know. But, yeah, so getting into the video, we have Sauron, you know, why didn't he put people at the Mordor, or not Mordor, but Mount Doom kind of entrance and all that? And I think the main reason is the ring in its origin was made to corrupt pretty much anything. We see this with like all the rings of power and all that stuff. And it's kind of why the elven rings are kind of kept secret and all that stuff and hidden from Sauron. So if we even look at it from the point of view of Frodo, where he basically couldn't even throw the ring away, even though he was very strong of will and stuff like that. So the whole point of it was that Sauron didn't think that that was even possible. So I don't know if you guys want to talk more on that or what your guys' thoughts are on that, but yeah.
I agree with that because how it went, the ring was always meant like an Achilles heel. It was the way to bring him his absolute power and invincibility. But at the same time, if it was used against him, it was his one true weakness that would cause him to never come back and just be completely destroyed in the materialistic world, if that makes sense.
Yeah, I think the fact that he put his whole like life essence into it was really like the reason why he didn't think that he would really need any protection for Mount Doom.
Yeah, and that whole thing basically where it was pretty much impossible to actually like get it into the lava. Like it's two different characters try with Isildur trying and he fails, and then Frodo as well. And like think about how it ends up getting destroyed. It's like if Gollum wasn't there, it wouldn't have been destroyed. Frodo would have taken the ring, walked a couple steps, and then Nazgul probably would have picked him up and then killed him and then taken it, and then bam, you have Sauron back in power.
Yeah.
So
because the only true person who can actually wield the ring is Sauron himself, so he didn't really have to worry about it realistically.
Yeah, that was the whole thing. And like that's the thing is like Sauron wanted other people to try and use the ring against him because the ring would have eventually like betrayed them.
Yeah, it was like a big beacon.
Yeah, if anything, he was counting on the ring getting into other people's hands because that's the easiest way for him to reclaim it.
Yeah.
Because of the corruption that it causes.
Yep.
Now, one thing I do think is interesting is if Saruman would have used it. I do think it would have been interesting, and I think we should probably do a video on that in the future because I think it would be interesting.
That'd be a good topic right there.
Because Saruman,
I have a lot to say on that.
Saruman was one of the few people that actually studied the ring quite a bit. Like he knew probably the most about it in the entire Middle Earth.
Yep.
And he was someone that was very good at mastering those type of things, and he was described as being very powerful. But
yeah, because he's literally one of the most powerful people on Middle Earth. Like he is like the supreme wizard.
Yep, he was Saruman the White. He was the highest of the group.
Yeah, and he's like a lore master. Nobody knew even close to what he knew except for maybe Elrond.
Yeah, he was the historian of the group.
Which is also kind of his downfall because he meddled into a lot of dark like relics and stuff like that, and it kind of I talked about it last week, and I think it kind of messed with his mind a little bit. But
oh, absolutely.
Getting on to the next part of this and why he didn't really feel like he needed anybody at Mount Doom is because if you think about Mordor and geographically how it was basically just a fortification with mountains. There was really only 3 ways in, where you had the front door, which is the Black Gate, which I mean, it's just dumb to try and go through that. I mean, we're told multiple times, even in the Fellowship of the Ring, that, you know, by characters like Boromir, it's basically impossible to assault that.
One does not simply.
Yeah, one does not simply. Yes. And you pretty much had to have everybody united to even be able to take the Black Gate on. And Sauron was very smart this time and had all of his forces kind of spread apart, like taking multiple different fights. Whereas, like, kind of in the movie they don't touch on it as much, but in the books it like kind of tells you that there's other fights going on, not just the ones with men, right? There's also
Yeah,
these fights in
Yeah, the
Dol Guldur and
dwarves are
stuff.
busy, and yeah,
yeah, the dwarves were having their fights. The men were fighting amongst themselves
fighting the
over
men of
the
the
east
east.
or like the south, I think it was.
Yeah.
Yeah,
So
and like
yeah, go ahead,
the
Nick.
first time. Oh yeah, the first time. Like, what is it? The War of the Last Alliance? Is that what it's called?
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, it took the combined like full power of men and elves to even
And that,
like bring him
yeah,
down, and
and those
obviously,
numbers were ginormous compared to the ones in the Lord of the Rings. Like,
yeah, because it's kind of to the point where it's like they're almost a shadow of their former selves
yeah,
because like the glory days have passed, basically.
yeah,
So there's no way that Sauron really had to worry about that happening again, at least for a very long time.
yep. Because I remember when the Rohirrim were lining up for their attack outside of Minas Tirith. I remember them saying like we have 5,000 horsemen, and I remember the king sitting there, Theoden, and he was just like, "Man, I remember back from the stories of the old day, glorious days, we had like 50,000 horsemen."
Right.
So just to show the pure number difference, and plus after constantly beating the Gondorians or whatever I guess you call them, just down to where they had a few people left in Minas Tirith compared to their city that they'd been living in, which was giant compared to Minas Tirith.
Yeah, not even to mention that the men of Numenor were just waning severely.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah,
Because you gotta remember in the first alliance, they had like the whole other kingdom. Like there was the kingdom of the men of like, I guess I don't. It's not. I guess it's Gondor, but you had Arnor and you had all of the Numenorian line still over there,
mhm.
and that
Oh
ends
yeah,
up getting wiped out after the last alliance with the Witch King and all that stuff. But
Yeah.
yep.
so getting past the Black Gate, that one's not really possible.
No, that would have been a Suicide Squad kind of thing to do there.
So your next option, you have two other options. Your other option is you go to Minas Morgul and you try to go kind of like through that castle, which we know is basically has a bunch of shit going on there with witchcraft, and that's kind of the
Yeah.
Witch King's lair in Mordor. And also, that is actually where the army that actually ends up invading Minas Tirith and all that is actually stationed. So at the time that Frodo and Sam would have been there, that would have been one of the hottest places for orcs activity at the time.
Yep.
So again, that one was kind of off limits and stupid as well. So that leaves you having one real option, and it's the one they end up taking, is kind of the path to Cirith Ungol. And even that one doesn't go like that great until you have some circumstances happen with the orcs having their infighting and all that stuff, and Frodo getting captured and all that stuff. It shows you like how difficult it really was to actually get into Mordor in the first place, let alone getting to Mount Doom. And I feel like that's what
Yeah.
Sauron was like planning. It's like it's so difficult to get into Mordor that he shouldn't even have to worry about guarding Mount Doom in the first place.
Yeah, I mean, they were all fortified positions. I mean, even if they weren't like the last spot, it had a giant spider in. I mean, what are you gonna do against that?
And this is
Yeah,
an
They
like
only,
old
they're not
they
spider
getting
only
too.
past
made it because
Shalem.
of the light.
The light and like
The light of the star, yeah.
they got lucky. Well, Frodo and Sam got lucky that Shelob didn't just straight up kill Frodo.
Yeah, no kidding.
Right, because it's like a primordial like entity, you know? It's like
Yeah. She'd been
nobody's ever
there
been able to
for
wound
years
Shelob.
time. Yeah. Yeah,
Like
that's the first time she actually got hurt.
Yep.
So you
like
kind of take that in perspective of the what, 8,000 years that the Lord of the Rings the lore was? Was it
yeah, it was pretty long. I
was
don't know
it
exactly.
Long
2,000
time.
years, yeah. Because the fourth era that they were, was it the third or fourth
They were in
era
the they
they're
were in the
in?
third. In
And the
the
Yeah.
third, it had already been like 3,000 years in that era alone.
Yeah, because Shelob was like the offspring of, is it Sineth? It's the one giant spider that was kind of fighting with Morgoth, and it's one of the offspring that end up like living in that little passage. But
Yeah,
yeah,
I can
no,
never remember the name.
Oh, there's so
there's
many
so
names,
many
dude.
names in Lord of the Rings. Like,
And he just dumps them on you. He doesn't even give you time to explain it or anything. He's just like, bam, names right
which
there.
I think is cool because it's cool for world building stuff. But
Oh,
yeah,
it's
it's a
wonderful.
lot. It's a
Yeah.
lot for one person to just know. But
Mhm.
yeah. So
It
you
would have been
have
nice if you started off with like each chapter just having a single new, I don't know if they were angels, gods, whatever you want to call them. Just each chapter had a new one. I know that'd be 100 chapters easily, but it would have been so much easier than what he ended up doing, which I understand the man could only do so much. He was making a whole lore, which took real countries like the ancient Greeks, Romans, Chinese. It took them hundreds of years to finally get all their stuff said and
Yeah, and
Yeah.
made.
he was doing it in one lifetime.
Yep.
Yeah, and he was doing it within a few months or not a few months, few years. Because I mean, like I said, he had to write all his other books too on top of that.
Yeah.
So even getting past Sheila, how they end up doing. Think about it. You also have to go through another fortress, which in Kurthungel and all that, which has the Black
Mhm.
Orcai, and they have already the Mordor orcs there as well.
Yeah.
That's almost an impossible task. The only reason Sam and Frodo get through that is because of the infighting going on, like because they have their own little civil war type clash there. If
Yeah, the
that doesn't
Uruk-hai and the Orc
happen,
getting angry at each
if
other.
that doesn't happen, they are literally screwed. Like
Mhm.
Yeah, like
Sam's cool and all, but he's not taking down an army. Like it's just not happening.
he'd end up as meat on the menu is what he would do.
It's back on the menu. And what also helped is how the Uruk-hai and the orcs would or goblins, whatever you want to call them, same different thing, is how they scare themselves into thinking Sam was an elven warrior, like one of the ones
Yeah,
from the
Yeah.
stories of old. So that kind of put the fear in the few that were still alive, and they were kind of like, "Oh crap, it's that guy. He's really good, and we should be scared." When in all reality, not that he wasn't a good warrior, but it was just a halfling.
yeah,
For a hobbit, he was a good warrior,
he
but
Yeah, for
was.
how he was a good warrior, but in the general idea of warriors, he's kind of bottom of the list. Like
pretty mid. Yeah.
Yeah,
yeah,
especially against Black Orcai, which I mean,
made for that
Orcai,
kind of stuff.
they're
Like
pretty
Literally
tough.
bred for war. You know.
they came out of them little gooby globby thingy majiggers as full grown orcai, and like not even babies had to be grown up like any other realist or I don't know what I want to say population. They were just boom right out of the. I mean, it was
Yeah.
like a they just popped up ready to go. Give me an axe and I'll murder, and they just immediately knew what to do.
Well, yeah, that's one of the big problems with Mordor's forces compared to like Gondor or something like that, because it's like all these soldiers you're losing if you're like Gondor or whatever. It takes you a while to get these soldiers back up. Like you don't just have men just ready to go. Like
Yeah,
and
they
Yeah.
Mordor, it's just like you can just keep going, just keep going,
yeah
just
they
keep popping them out.
They're
yeah they had
essentially like clones at this point. You know.
yeah
Yeah.
they were kind of like clones minus the still even they. I mean, they did amazing with making them clones in Star Wars. Not going to go too much into that, but it still took them forever to raise them and stuff because they were
Actually,
it was
you know,
only half the
here's a better
lifespan.
reference of what you guys just brought up. The orcs were the droids. There you
Yeah,
go. They
Yep.
just
pretty
pop
good
up.
answer. Yeah,
And then the
yeah.
clones were
Just
like,
Bam,
being created and popped
yeah,
out.
bam, boom, bop, done. Meanwhile, the clones or the men of the Middle Earth had to take their time and getting
Yeah, like
raised. This
the
and that.
race of men, they actually need time to age and
Yeah,
all that. And the elves just aren't very numerous in general, so you
no,
have
they're
that
not.
issue too.
Which I never understood that either. Why didn't they just like? I understand they didn't want to like exhaust the resources of Middle Earth, but I feel like if you live forever, you except for dying in battle, they could have done some pretty good stuff if they had a large amount of them instead of just the few they had.
yeah,
While true, I just they don't have any interest in it as
yeah.
far as I'm
Yeah,
aware.
no, I know. It was just I always sort of kind of found that funny how that worked out.
And then, so the next part, all right, they get through Kurthungel. You also can't get through Mordor because of the thousands of orcs that there are in there. Like, think about what
Mhm.
also has to happen. The impossible victory that Gondor and Rohan have at Pelennor Fields, right? If that doesn't happen, Sam and Frodo are still screwed. Like, because
Yeah.
there's just no way of getting through Mordor without being spotted and then eventually killed.
Yeah, because they did
Yeah.
get spotted because they were stuck on that one road where they couldn't go
Yeah.
anywhere else.
Hmm.
I mean, yeah, I was surprised. I understand that it's a book and it's written to be like that. But if that was real life, they would have never made it. Because I mean, who's going to look at these two halflings in their orc or goblin armor, and there's a bunch of goblins going by, like, "Hey, these guys are half our size. That's not normal. We should check that out."
And it's funny that you mentioned that too, because I think that's yet another reason why Sauron didn't really need to worry, is because nobody had any faith in halflings at all.
Yeah, I
Um,
mean, no one had heard of halflings except for like Gandalf, just because he knew they were there hundreds of years before. Like
yeah,
all,
like they
all.
don't have the reputation to
Mhm.
that you would think that they would actually be able to handle any situation that would come their way.
Yeah, anyone past East of Bree was like, "Wait, what's a halfling?"
Yeah.
Oh, those things
Right.
from legends of old that are like older than time itself. Oh, they're still around.
Like, yeah, the only like halfling most of anyone would know of would be of just Bilbo, and that's just because of the Hobbit. But like, if you go like before the Hobbit, like all the events of that
Okay,
happens,
yeah.
nobody knows who hobbits are really. Like,
Yeah, it's more of like a rumor at that point.
yeah, it's
Yeah,
kind of like a myth, kind of like the Ents. That's a good comparison right there, because nobody
Yeah.
like
yeah.
knew
Nobody
of them
remembers the
really.
Ents or the Imp wise. But yeah, like and another thing, even with Bilbo, it was yeah, he was there, but in the books and the movies, well, the book and movies, he's kind of one of the dwarves. He looks like one. It's just he's a little slightly shorter and no facial hair.
Yeah.
And then half the time when he is there, I mean, the only big interaction he truly has is when he left the Lonely Mountain with the oh, what's the name of that jewel? The Arkenstone.
Mm,
That's the
Yeah.
only time he really has any interaction with the humans, 'cause, every other time he's trying to hide and get them there because, like, the elves were angry at them, they were trying to escape the spiders, the goblins were after them, I mean, you name it, they were just trying to hide, and he was trying to be sneakier than all, plus he had the ring then, so it helped him be even more hidden from everyone else.
Yeah, and if I'm
So
not mistaken, the Rangers knew about the hobbits, didn't they? Because weren't they
yeah.
watching the Shire?
yeah,
Yep.
they watched over them, but the Rangers in the Lord of the Rings, I mean,
Yeah. They
they
know
never truly.
lore that most people don't
Yeah,
know yet, except for
yeah.
the elves.
They know what few people did know, but the Rangers themselves were a very small number anyways. They never truly say how many there is, I think, but I mean, if I
Yeah.
had to guess, it'd be less than 1,000 because that lifestyle, it's kind of like Game of Thrones. It's kind of like the taking the black. Like only certain people do it. I'm not saying it's like a something better than death, but not much better. But it's something few people take the responsibility of.
Well, it's also because a lot of the like rangers in the west and the north
Mhm.
are just remnants of the kingdom
Yeah.
of Numenor. So
That
like,
is true. Yeah, that too.
Yeah, they have the noble blood, essentially.
so that's why there's so few of them, and then that's
Yeah.
also why they know of the hobbits, because their kingdom was like very close
Right.
to them.
Yeah, right there.
But my question is, did Sauron even know of the Rangers?
That's a good question.
Oh, he definitely knew. Like,
Because I wasn't
because
sure if he knew about like the remaining men of Numenor.
I'll say
he
that's technically
definitely
right.
knew there were remnants, just be based upon the Witch King, because the Witch King, when
Oh
he
yeah,
falls, or he doesn't fall, but when I guess his kingdom up there in Agmar falls,
yeah,
like he was defeated by Glorfindel basically, and like the remnants of the Rangers, so he knew there would still be some intact.
Okay, yeah, that's true.
yeah. That's fair. And he should know that they would be one of them, like a surviving heir of Isildur.
Yeah.
Like so, he most likely knew of Aragorn.
Yeah,
But
but I mean, the chance well,
on
once
paper,
again,
what can
another
Aragorn do? You know?
He
yeah,
probably didn't know of Aragon, but he like probably knew that there was still a shot, like there would still be some like line still there, just
Yeah,
because
yeah. Like
Aragon
he
was
wouldn't know
hidden.
Aragorn by name,
Yeah, because
but
Aragon for the most part was hidden in Rivendell in his early years, and then he took
that is
like a
true.
different name when he was
yeah,
doing other stuff.
Estelle, I think,
Yeah,
is
because
what
he
his
goes
name
to
was.
Yeah.
Rohan and he's undercover basically, because like when he in the Two Towers when he meets up with Éomer, he's like, I've been there before, just under a different name and stuff like that.
Yeah,
Mhm.
so he goes by aliases, and he took an elvish name in Rivendell, and he basically adopted elven ways. So he
Yeah.
can honestly be passed off as an elf, at least from a distance, from any scouts or whatever.
Yeah.
Yeah. And then on top of all that, Sauron was kind of doing he was crunching his numbers over there. He's kind of like, yeah, chance of a hobbit being used, we're gonna put that at like negative infinity. The chance of a true heir, the Numenor being alive, that's pretty low there too. I ain't gonna worry about them Rangers. They're kind of low in numbers. I mean, everything was just all odds were stacked against them. So it was just he's like, I got this. I don't need to worry about them little things.
Well, yeah, I mean, if you even look at the Battle of Pelennor Fields, the odds of Sauron losing that battle is just astronomically like low. Like
Mhm.
Yeah,
think about Rohan at the timing they showed up. If they show up a little later, Minas Tirith is gone. Like it doesn't matter, because in the books, I forget what they're called, but like the soldier, like the ghost soldiers or whatever. In the books, they
Yeah.
don't
yeah,
actually attack at Pelennor. They only like
Mm.
help with the Corsairs that are coming in with their ships. They take those out, and then Aragorn like releases them, and then Aragorn, Legolas, and Gimli end up showing up.
Yeah, it's like
So
yeah,
3 people. Ooh.
it's like that part wouldn't have really changed anything.
And
And
mentioning the men of Rohan showing up, that's another reason why Sauron was so confident, is because he was causing turmoil in so many different kingdoms at once
yeah,
that there was no, on paper anyways, there would be no united front to actually confront his armies.
because that was the thing for Sauron, is Sauron didn't actually care if a lot of these other battles went south for him. What they were meant to be was a distraction. Don't let everyone unify to go against him. Because while these forces are taking on the dwarves at Erebor, or they're taking on the elves in Mirkwood, or they're doing whatever, as long as they're not coming to help at Pelennor Fields, Gondor should fall. And once Gondor falls, now you're a problem, because okay, the elves, they're not, there's not enough numbers for them to withstand all of Mordor. Elrond says this. The dwarves, the same thing. Like, they're definitely a mighty foe and all that, but they don't have the numbers to take on all of Mordor.
Yeah,
And they're having enough trouble with the Easterlings.
Yeah.
Yeah. That, and they didn't really want to leave their caves or their mines.
Yeah.
They wanted to stay and keep what was theirs. They probably would have been fine if Sauron took over and he'd be like, "Hey, we're okay with this as long as you just let us live in our mines and not, keep it at that."
And I think Sauron was counting on the rift between the elves and the dwarves as well, because those are two, albeit relatively small in numbers, but yeah, they're some of the mightiest races on Middle Earth.
Yeah.
And with that division already there, he can easily capitalize on that to split them up even further.
Yeah. Because Sauron was already trying to split the dwarves up and get like them to just kind of stay out of the war in general. Because like at the Council of Elrond, when they're deciding what they should do with the ring and all that, Glowin says as much. He's like, the mouth of Sauron came to us and was like, if you give us information on, Bilbo and all that stuff, we'll give you one of the, the Ring of Power back. Or I don't know if it's all of them, but I know it's at least one. And he's already trying to kind of like get the dwarves to just kind of stay out of it and all that. So it shows you how much of a plan Sauron really had, because as long as the all these forces of good were not unified, he thought he had a cakewalk, which in reality he kind of did. Like, think about it. He even was like telling Saruman to basically invade Rohan. And even that in and of itself, like, Saruman should have beaten Rohan, but the Rohirrim show up really late at the Helm's Deep and all that, plus the Ents and all that stuff. But really, Sauron's plan was pretty smart. Like, for the most part, it was like 1 in a billion that he loses that whole thing with the ring getting destroyed and all that.
Yeah.
And the rings of power themselves, like the 3 for the elves, 7 for the dwarves, 9 for men,
Yeah.
I mean, if you notice, like, the elves are definitely the most strong-willed, and they get the least amount of rings, and the men are the most weak-willed, and they get the most, and that's definitely intentional. Because if you have, potentially, 16 people with rings of power that are most likely going to be corrupted, I mean, that right there is a huge asset for Sauron.
Yeah. And that's kind of what he tried to do on the first time he went to war and was trying to conquer Middle Earth. He tried to do that where he made the dwarves and the men get kind of corrupted to try and keep them out, but it's like it just didn't work the way I think he thought it was going to. So in this time he used a different approach and just used his mass armies and separated everyone.
Yep.
Yeah, that is
So I think the last thing I want to talk about this, because I just thought about it as we were talking about some stuff, is that another thing is Sauron, if you think about the people that would have been able to have the ring, right, if we're just taking out the like halflings and all that, think about how easily the men get corrupted, right? Isildur has the ring for barely any time, and he can't even throw it into Mount Doom.
From the battle to the walk to Mount Doom, he's just.
And if you think about it like this, Boromir is by all means said to be one of the strongest willed and best warriors of Gondor, and him just being next to the ring for like I think a month, maybe a month or two.
Yeah,
he is already corrupted by it and tries to literally take it from Frodo. So it shows you, like, there was no chance any men were going to be able to destroy the ring.
because just the temptation alone is enough to break any man's will.
Yeah. And the dwarves, for the most part, the dwarves would have tried to probably use it to, you know, mine more and collect more wealth, kind of how the Arkenstone was in a way, and how the rings that they did get did amplify those things. And then the elves, I don't know what if an elf would have had the ring. I don't know what would have happened there. I don't think they would have been able to throw it away. It's a weird idea with all these other races.
Yeah. Oh, an elf kind of going dark is a very weird. I don't even know if that could happen.
Well, we know that Galadriel like says, you know, she would have became like this dark like sorceress type thing.
Yeah.
But for her, I feel like it's different because she's already like, a very powerful being, like a Saruman.
Mm-hmm. I mean, she's like what, half goddess, half angel, whatever it is, or is she a fourth? Somewhere real close to her birth, or I guess her part of the family tree was a god or angel, whatever they're considered in the Silmarillion.
Yeah, well, all elves are
right
like
there.
directly created by the like gods, basically, as like the first race on Middle Earth.
That's how they all were, except orcs were goblins were a little different, but dwarves were made by one, and then the elves and the humans were made by a few. They were all made by them, but she had a god, come into the family tree and mix with the elf.
Yeah.
Kind of making her even stronger than just your typical elf.
I think what Nick's trying to say is like the elves were after like things like trees and ents and stuff, the elves were like the first kind of like human-esque type thing that was put on in Middle Earth. Like the humans and dwarves came a lot later on.
I guess
the dwarves are older than the humans. The humans were basically the youngest race, except for maybe hobbits. I'm not sure where they fall in.
I'm not sure on that either. But
I think they were real later because I remember when I was reading the Silmarillion, I never even heard about the hobbits yet. I have heard about elves, humans, and dwarves.
Yeah, that might explain why they're called halflings too.
Yeah.
All right. Well, unless you guys have anything else to say, I'm good to wrap this one up.
No, that about sums it up for me.
Yeah, I think that sums it up for me as well.
All right. Well, thank you guys all for watching. If you like the Lord of the Rings content, let us know. And we will probably be back next week with a video. Don't know what it's going to be yet, but yeah. All right, bye guys.